Well, we are going to touch on some issues today that are very important. So I hope you save this or you share it. You will get a link when we're finished. But there's many issues today in your med spa and practices that we're all facing today. And we hear about them as consultants all the time. So how can you, as doctors or providers, avoid making landmine mistakes that really go against the regulatory compliance? So if you want to be compliant, you're in the right place at the right time, because we have an amazing person joining us today, Dr. Jeffrey Segal, who is a physician as well as a lawyer. So he's going to give us the legalities and the legal part about how you can stay safe, how you could stay out of trouble. And we're going to talk about 5 marketing landmines that risk your HIPAA and regulatory compliance issues. And there is a handout at the end. And we do like when you ask us some questions. If we don't get them today, we will get them and follow up afterwards. But there's many issues today in medical practices that we're facing. And your staff needs to be aware of what we are going to tell you today. This is really important information that a lot of you might not be aware of. So you really have to stay tuned to what is going on in your practice and online, on your website, text messaging, social media, who's running your business. In most cases, it's not you. So stay until the end. There will be an open discussion series as well as a reminder that there is a survey, and we always like to see your feedback and hear your suggestions. And there will also be a handout that you should not miss on the 5 landmines that we're going to cover today. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Jeffrey Segal, who is the founder of Medical Justice and a board certified neurosurgeon. So he takes care of it all. Dr. Segal is a board certified neurosurgeon who's trained at Baylor, and he also graduated from law school with top honors. We have been working together for many years, and medical justice is so important. And it's so many things that you leave behind and you're not thinking about when you hire your marketing people, when you hire your front desk gal who's now doing text messaging and social media posts for you. So you really need to listen and learn today very carefully to this conversation. You can save it, you can share it, and you will get a link to it. And I want you to stay tuned and listen to all of our pearls that we're going to share with you today as I introduce Dr. Jeffrey Segal. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hey, Cheryl, just seems like we were here a few days ago, but time has flown, and here we are again talking about all the rotten things that can happen to practices out. As I often say, everybody's having fun at the poker game till someone pulls out a gun. So social media, online marketing, everything is going great until it doesn't. And you want to prevent a problem before it turns into a big problem.
You know, and that's so true. And we talk to people every day on your end, on our end, that don't know what they're doing. They're not sure if they're being compliant or not. And some people are not even aware of what the compliance is when it comes to online. So, you know, there's online reviews. We tell all our clients, get as many testimonials you can. Make sure you get video testimonials. Make sure you start putting things on your website, online. But we have to consider all of the compliance and the HIPAA and what's good and what's not good. And, you know, you get these positive reviews, you're all excited to get them all over and get them out there on the internet, but there's legal ramifications. So maybe you could tell us about those.
Yeah, let's start. I mean, look, we'll never cover all of this in one session, but let's whet appetites and see where we go. So look, there's no doubt that online marketing works. It works well. There is no better way to spend your money than having your patients be your advocate. They are your ambassadors. It's social proof. And so the 2 ways you can kind of do that would be before and after pictures, testimonials, and reviews. Okay, so actually there are 3 ways, not 2 ways. But let's start with pictures or videos, before and after pictures. What do you need to do? You need to get the patient's authorization. The authorization is a HIPAA release, a HIPAA release. And HIPAA release needs to have a bunch of check boxes that the patient says, I'm okay with this, I'm okay with that. Let me tell you what not to do and then tell you what to do. This is what you shouldn't do. When someone comes in, have them sign a blanket statement that just by walking into this practice, I can use any picture that I take of you for any reason whatsoever, and you have no choice. I would not do that. While it may give you comfort, I don't think it is enforceable. I think a better way to do it is to certainly take pictures internally for your medical record and get the authorization to do that. But more importantly, if you want to use it to market, just explain to the patient how it will be used, what you're going to use it for, so the patient is on the same page. Let me give you an example. You could say that we will use your before and after pictures for online marketing on our website or on third-party sites. Now, other little nuances that the release must include is that, look, if at some point down the road you want us to take it down, just call us. If we can take it down, we will. We will honor your request. That is required by HIPAA. There are some people who believe that once a person has given you their authorization or permission to post something online, it's yours. They're out of control. But HIPAA doesn't agree with that. You don't want to be on the wrong side of HIPAA. The cost of getting that wrong is a nasty letter, both from the patient and the Office of Inspector General from Department of Health and Human Services. So that's kind of a first, let's get our feet wet conversation.
And it's a good one. There's reviews and then there's reviews. There's review websites. There's also, practices that are sold on the fact, well, if you get a negative review, we can get rid of it. Or, why don't you let us get the reviews for you, or we'll write reviews, or we'll get them for you and we'll just put them up. And it's the same thing with buying likes, except you're not going to get in trouble for buying likes on Facebook, but, there will be some responsibility if you have somebody posting reviews that are not true reviews. So what's your comment on that today?
Okay, this is so easy to answer. Don't buy reviews, don't trade reviews. Let me tell you why. I interviewed a woman who, I can't remember precisely what her YouTube site is, but it's like fakereviewwatch.com.
Mhm.
She outed at least one practice on the West Coast because I think she had a personal connection to the practice and they weren't helpful to her. And she believed correctly that they had misrepresented the practice and now has outed them. And it turns out that she is now identified large numbers of businesses, including doctors, med spas, and even and attorneys who were buying reviews from Bangladesh. So what did that mean? It meant exactly. So the practice would write the review, send it out to someone in Bangladesh, and use their Gmail account to post a review. Sounds good, right? No, it's idiotic because here's what's going on right now. Now these people are exposed as having purchased reviews from people in Bangladesh. That means that there's now a negative online campaign letting the public know that these practices are charlatans. You can't trust anything. So that's step number one. Step number two is that what will follow is a complaint to the Board of Medicine or whatever the licensing board is that regulates your particular practice. And the argument is that if you're purchasing reviews, it's false and deceptive advertising. That's a good way to lose your license. And the point is that you don't have to purchase reviews. There are bona fide platforms that are out there that allow you to gently ask your patients, often at the point of service. I know because we have one, and it's very easy to get your patients to say yes. There's no reason to go to Bangladesh to purchase. And let me just describe what she has on her YouTube channel. It shows how the same person in Bangladesh who would, and now it's John B or whatever his name is, with a picture of someone stolen from a LinkedIn profile or someone created from a deep fake. These are people that have posted a review on orthopedic practice in Pennsylvania, on a moving service in Florida, on a restaurant in Kansas City, and a divorce attorney in California. These people get around, yeah. And so the conclusion is this is insane. No reason to do it. The benefits are minimal. The risk is gargantuan. Don't do it.
I mean, reviews from a third party could really get you in trouble. And I think that's something that everybody has to be very aware of, because that is a landmine. So now you have reviews, and you want to respond, or somebody in the office sees a positive review and now they want to respond to that review. Again, we have compliance issues here because you can't just respond acknowledging that they are a patient. So what is your suggestion in a simplified version for the front desk gal or the social media person that is answering these positive reviews?
Okay, so first, I'm not a fan of responding to positive reviews on the internet. Why? In a sense, you're just thanking them for the thanks. It looks canned, it's not original. And truth be told, if you are that good at creating original content, to thank someone for the thanks, you should quit your current job and then move to Los Angeles and become a script writer, because that is where your true gift lies. And since most of us don't fall into that category, myself included, don't do it, because the more shots you have at the goalpost in terms of trying to deliver a response, the more likely it is that you will ultimately create a HIPAA problem, acknowledging this is your patient. Now you're thinking, how can this be a HIPAA problem? The patient loves me. They think I walk on water. Sure, they love you today. They may not love you so much tomorrow. So I tell people it's not a great use of their very valuable time to respond to positive reviews online. If you do really want to thank someone, thank them when they come back. You can just into the practice, just say, hey, look, I saw what you wrote about our practice. I really appreciate that. Do it in person. Pick up the phone, call them, email them. There are plenty of ways to thank someone for the thanks. So as it relates to positive reviews, not a fan. Now let's migrate over to managing negative reviews. So nobody likes getting negative reviews. I don't like getting them. You don't like getting them. Nobody likes getting them. But it's a fact of life. And the good news is the public knows you can't make everybody happy. You can make most people happy, but you can't make everyone happy. But the more important question is whether you can do service recovery. Can you take a negative and turn it into a positive? Can you solve this patient's problem? And frequently you can. So if it's a problem that you believe you can solve, start by doing this old school. Old school is you call them, say, I noticed online that you were unhappy with blah, 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 whatever that is. I I hate seeing that. I hate seeing it. It's not flattering, but let me see if I can solve it for you. So once you've solved the problem, you can reach back out to this patient and say, look, I hope we're on a better track, the two of us. And if they say, yeah, we are, and I really appreciate what you did, the next words, and these are the magic words, I'd appreciate it if you would update or remove, the old negative review, but here are the magic words. It's a request, not a demand. It's a request, not a demand. And look, they may not do anything, but humans like to reciprocate. If one person has done something nice for another person and they've won their little battle, great. Now's the time to ask, but do it where they're still in the driver's seat. So let's assume that you can't solve their problem, or let's assume that they said, "Yeah, I'll update it." They just don't do it. Then I would probably consider a HIPAA compliant response. So what is a HIPAA compliant response? It is one that does not disclose any protected health information. Let me give you an example. Let's assume I'm a plastic surgeon. I did a facelift, and my patient unfortunately got an infection, and they're complaining that they got an infection and that I'm going to charge them $10,000 to fix it. Okay. Now, but let's assume behind the scenes that I don't do that, meaning that I would not charge someone $10,000 to do a revision. I would probably, in this case, waive my professional fee and do a revision. So here's what my response would be. We're sorry anytime anyone has a complication. Our infection rate for our practice for this procedure is 0.5%, which is well below the national average still. When any patient gets any complication, and all practices will eventually get a complication. If any practice says they've never had a complication ever, you should not walk but run. But we will stay by our patients, and we often do a revision where we waive our professional fee. So what does that message do? It basically says that we're human, we're not perfect, no practice is perfect. I've also said that my infection rate for the practice is below the national average. So I'm giving myself a marketing prop by doing that. I'm also acknowledging that even though it's below the national average, some patients will get a complication. And here's how we handle complications broadly. Note, I did not make any comment about this particular patient. Didn't know anything. I didn't even say she's my patient. I didn't comment about her infection. I'm speaking generically, speaking broadly. And I also include yet another marketing message number 2, which is that you don't have to be your own insurance company. If you get a complication requiring a revision, we typically waive our professional fee. So there you're telegraphing to the public that you kind of stand by your work. Now, I just pulled that out as an example. There are plenty of other examples in terms of service recovery, but be careful. What I did not say in there, first of all, I didn't argue with the patient. I didn't say the reason you got this infection was because you smoked and I told you not to smoke. You got this infection because you went back to work after 4 days and I told you to take 2 weeks off. Don't get into a debate with the patient. You'll never win this debate. It's the goal here is not to be proven right. It's to send a message to the public that you solve problems. You're a problem solver, and that if you, the prospective patient, should, God forbid, get a problem, it's not the end of the world. We'll stand by you. So that's where my head's at on that. I do have more to say on it, but as you can see, I'm kind of passionate about this topic.
Well, it's a major topic. And I think to your point, I think if anybody is listening, they should be taking notes and actually almost creating a document, short and sweet, that could be used in general, that they can edit when there is a problem. So they don't have to start thinking from scratch. How do we respond to this? Get your physician or provider to approve it. Make sure it's very general to your major key point, and that it has some little marketing plugs in there, which is great. But those are great pearls for a practice to have some things already that they can cut and paste and customize, but yet keep very general. And I think that is the key point here, is you don't want to acknowledge that they are a patient online, because
Exactly.
then you're going across the line.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at your draft of what you're going to post
Right.
online and it says the word you, if the word you is in there, that's a problem.
Right.
You want to just say our patients, or our record. You're really speaking broadly and generically. You're not outing this particular patient.
No, and I think that's a really good point. And I think that there needs to be a staff meeting, and we promote staff meetings as consultants. There should be a staff meeting on some of these topics ongoing. Don't just think because your staff heard it 2 or 3 or 4 years ago that they remember it. Right now with COVID and what's going on, there's a lot to remember. A lot of things have changed. And sometimes you have to bring these important legal topics back to top of mind. And
Cheryl, what I like about your suggestion, having this at a staff meeting, it's a great idea because you have a bunch of brains thinking about this. And first of all, it's an opportunity for everybody to weigh in on this and be a good set of checks and balances. No less important, it's a good way for everybody to learn. So everybody is keeping an eye on this, everybody is learning. And these are easy things to forget, when you're trying to answer in the heat of the moment, an angry patient. There are so many tools at your disposal. You're trying to make sure you don't get it wrong. And by having more and more people at least weigh in on what a proper response could look like, you're more likely to get it right.
absolutely. And I was talking to a practice yesterday that has 22 and 23-year-olds doing all their texting and email and responses. And I'm not even sure they even understand any of this. So I think that, when you hire, or to reiterate and go over with your staff again, it can't hurt. You have to be very cautious. And just like in a restaurant, the customer's always right. Here, your client is always right. So if they have a problem, you need to address it and personally address it. Bring them back in, like you said. Make a phone call. Don't do it through email and text. I'm the number one texter that I know. And the problem with text is you don't always get the messenger right across the way
Right,
exactly you're thinking about it. And we're
right.
all talking into Surrey, can you text this? And then it comes out totally botched. So I think to really keep it very safe, go the old fashioned way, pick up the phone, you can write a note and try to get them back in, especially with somebody who is not happy, because you don't want them going and telling 25 people how unhappy they are. So nip it in the bud as soon as it happens. And I think that is what you say, landmine, waiting to happen in a lot of the practices, now that social media has become even more important and all online. People are working online now, even doing consults online. So if somebody is not a patient and you're doing a consult on them, you have to be very careful in the same way that you just said that. You have to keep it very general. You can't give them medical advice if they are not one of your patients. And maybe you want to chime in on that for a minute. I just kind of
Yeah,
thought
let's
about
talk
that.
let's talk telemedicine,
Yeah.
okay? So there's some COVID good news and then there's some long-term let's be careful news. What's the good news? The good news is that when COVID hit, the federal government and virtually every state licensing board said we're going to make it a little bit easier to do teleconsults, okay? So the before picture was if you wanted to do telemedicine, you needed and you were engaged in a doctor-patient relationship, you needed to have a license in the state where the patient was, either directly, meaning that you formally applied for a license in Indiana or Louisiana,
Mhm.
or you had a kind of a broad license with the Interstate Medical Licensing Act, which
Mhm.
means that if you've got a license in one state, you can apply and get kind of a bundle of licenses in other states. There are about 30 states, but not all states are in
Right.
that. So, for example, California, not in it. So, and I'm giving you the before picture because it has loosened up briefly, but I'll tell you how we manage it right now. Let's say you want to do an initial consultation and it crosses state lines. The main concern is that you don't want to be practicing medicine without a license in the state where the patient lives. So the way, but you ideally you want to do good by this prospect so they don't have to get into an airplane, show up to your practice on the other side of the country, and then you tell them, look, not a good candidate, or I can't manage your expectations, etc. So yeah, there's some benefit on both sides. How do we do it? We do it by setting up the initial consult as a meet and greet, meaning that you explicitly say, we're just trying to figure out if you're a good fit for our practice and whether I'm a good fit for you. That way you can figure out whether you like us and whether we like you. So we are not forming a doctor-patient relationship right now, and you acknowledge that. And the benefit of each side acknowledging that this is not a doctor-patient relationship, that this is an initial meet and greet, it gets them comfortable with who you are, and they can make an informed decision whether ultimately to get on a plane to see you and establish a bona fide doctor-patient relationship. So you save them money and time, etc., and you don't get hit with the unauthorized practice of medicine. Now, with COVID, you don't even need to do all that for the moment. I mean, it's gotten a little bit easier just to do a regular doctor-patient visit. As to whether you can cross state lines or not, I am cautious about that. I would be careful about doing that. I would say you should stick to the script that we're talking about, which is initially not a doctor-patient relationship or licensed provider relationship. Ultimately, if your goal is to get them into your practice where you perform procedures, the initial step with telemedicine is meet and greet, not a doctor-patient relationship or provider-patient relationship. And then ultimately, once they say, we like you, indeed we love you, then they show up, then you formalize a relationship in your geography.
Yeah, and that's great advice, and it's important to know. Like right now, as you kind of alluded to, they are softening or loosening up some things, but they will go back. And I think you're right. Just stay on target now, and don't get in trouble, whether it's now or in the future. And you know what you do and what you teach your staff, it all starts at the top. So you know what they see you doing, what they hear you doing, they're going to mimic. So you have to be very careful as to what you're saying and how you're saying it. But I love the meet and greet. Can we bring a glass of wine to
Highly,
the meet and greet?
highly recommended. Yes,
Okay,
highly recommended.
sounds
As
good.
long as
Like
you're not
that.
practicing medicine during the meet and
That's
greet, you
right.
should be just
If we're
fine.
just doing a meet and greet, might as well do happy hour and girls' night out and whatever else. But
Exactly.
getting back to legalities now, because we're running out of a little bit of time. But you know, one of the things that we often talk about is the text messaging. Going back to that, and the TCPA, people see that the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and they really don't know what that means. And I know people that have gotten in trouble. And of course, after they got in trouble, they called to say, oh, I just got in trouble for this. Well, let's figure out now just some quick tips and hints on text messaging and what they need to know right now. And we might even have to have another chat just about this, because that is a growing
Yeah.
way to communicate.
The TCPA Act, otherwise known as How to Make Lawyers Rich Act, is the second most common lawsuit filed in federal court by attorneys after
Oh,
employment lawsuit. So why? Because there's so much money in it. What is it? TCPA was a law that was put together, I believe, in the mid 90s. The goal was to keep people from calling you on a landline while you were eating dinner together at 6 p.m. It just shows you how old that law is, because at the time people used landlines and they actually ate dinner together at 6 p.m. But the law has been modernized to deal with mobile phones as well as texting. What does it mean? It basically says that if you send a text message that's a marketing text message to
mhm.
someone, and you didn't have their explicit written authorization to send marketing text messaging, for each message that you send out, you could be on the hook for $500 to $1,500. So I know you're thinking, well, okay, so I just sent out in a marketing campaign a text message, so it's 1,500 bucks. Let's take the worst case scenario. No, it's 1,500, 500 to $1,500 for each text message in that campaign. So let's assume you sent it out to 1,000 people. Okay, so 1,000, they don't, and by the way, 1,000 people don't have to be pissed off. All you need is one person to be pissed
Wow.
off to turn this into a class action suit. So let's do some math here.
Wow.
500 times 1,000, $500,000, 1,500 times 1,000 is 1.5 million. But you can well imagine sending it out to 3,000 people. You can see where the numbers get to be pretty serious. Most people don't have insurance for this. So what's the solution for this? How do we do this? Because I open by saying you get beaten up if you send a marketing message via text without authorization. Just get the patient's authorization up front. So when they first see you in the practice, you basically give them a sheet that says, look, um, we tend to be very careful about how we communicate with our patients, but many people like the convenience of either emailing or text messaging. And if you fall into this category, as most people do, then just sign on the dotted line that you give us permission to use email and or text messaging for these things. A would be for appointment reminders, medication refills, medical stuff. And then number two, you could say marketing messages. Just have the box checked. And if the patient checks on the box, signs away, wonderful, you're done. So if the nasty attorney down the road sends you a letter saying, hey, you're in violation of TCPA, you write back saying, I don't think so. I have the patient's written authorization in advance to do precisely what we just did. So, pound sand, go away.
So if they sign something in your office, they don't have to also opt into a text message or the first one. You can just start text messaging.
The moment they have the moment you have the patient, so let's say I visit you in your practice, okay, Dr. Whitman, and part of the initial package is this document that we just talked about. A lot of people like the convenience of using an insecure platform, a platform that's not secure, like email or text messaging. If you would like us to send any information, to communicate with you by email or text messaging, check this box, and then have another box. And it's a bit longer because the TCPA form and HIPAA form is a bit longer than what I just said, but it's still a form. And on the bottom, it could say that includes marketing messages. And if you don't want us to do this anymore, just let us know. We'll take you off the list. Not a big deal. So they're opting in, if you will, when they first see you. And at that point, you're done. You've got everything you need until they say stop.
And what happens if a friend, because often when we do email blasts or messages, we want people to refer a friend. I mean, that's saying a big thank you. So now they've taken that and they themselves, the patient, sent it to a friend. There's no liability on your part.
No, because you're not the person that sent it. So
Okay.
the only liability you would ever have is you sending an unauthorized text message. That's marketing, a marketing text message to someone, and you didn't have their permission. But if they do it, then it's not you. You're
And there's a
good.
lot of companies out there, like we know, that are part of an EMR program. So you have now a portal, you're in their EMR system, and through that, they could send out emails and text messages. So even with that, there's no extra opting in. It's just that one form that they fill out in your office.
It's got to be the form that is in a record somewhere. I would not assume, without asking the right question, that their workflow in the EMR automatically makes it TCPA kosher. It may. I would just ask the question. I mean, I've given you enough ammunition,
Right.
which essentially says TCPA bad. You don't want to be on the wrong side of TCPA. So ask your vendor. I just want to make sure that this is that the marketing component of this is TCPA compliant. And if they say it is, then that's helpful. If they say, huh, what's TCPA, then that's a problem.
And, how do you help when it comes to dealing with these practices that probably now have had problems because they're not going to call a lawyer just to say hello like I do, unless there is an issue. So how do you work with the practice to deal with whatever the issue is? Do you have an hourly fee? Is it a program that you have? What are they're going to call you? You'll give them a free consult. What will you do for them so we can send you more people as we have been doing
Right.
over
So we work as a subscription-based business where people become members of our organization. The cost is pretty modest. And the main benefit you get, among others, is that we are the hotline. You can call us and commiserate with us, and we give general medical legal guidance on these issues. We also have as a courtesy on our website, medicaljustice.com, where you can get a 15-minute free consultation, and you don't even have to be a member. It's a way to just kind of get some general information early on, and hopefully you'll love us and become a member. I mean, the cost for membership, this is the bargain of the century. It really is pretty minimal. It varies anywhere from $80 a month to $185 a month for a plastic surgeon. And the number of headaches that we solve is
there.
pretty significant. Yeah, we've seen it well, actually, every time I say we've seen it all,
Something else happened.
I'm proven wrong. So, yeah.
I say the same thing all the time. I thought I knew it all. I thought I heard it all.
Mm-mm.
And then there's something else that comes up. And you were gracious enough to give us a handout today about how doctors can avoid the 5 marketing landmines. And we kind of touched on some of them today, and their risk and compliance. So thank you for that. So anybody who stays on to the end will get that, and they'll get it in an email. So, to close, what is the key takeaway for today that you have for everybody who is COVID crazy? We can't wait to get out of this. We don't know when it's happening. What's the next thing? What's the takeaway, that they could look at to see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Right. So look, there's a lot of pent up demand, and I think ultimately 2021 is going to be a pretty good year for most people. I wish it were going to be a great year for everyone, but I know that's not going to be the case. But for many people, this will be a good year, certainly from a business perspective, and I'm hopeful from a health perspective. I do think that the take home message is compliance is cool. Think about compliance early on. For many practices, they do have 22-year-olds at the front desk or managing their marketing campaigns. Just remember that the regulators don't necessarily see the world through their eyes. And here's an example we got last week. We have a medical justice member who has an Instagram account, and there are a couple pictures of before and afters of what it looks like with a particular lip injection. And I have no idea who put those photos up, but likely they were taken from some other Instagram account just to prove
Oh,
an
wow.
educational point. So what happened to this doctor? He gets a letter from an attorney, and I'm actually got a blog post that goes out tomorrow, and it's really, dude, you stole my patient's pictures. So what did this lawyer want? He wanted $60,000
Oh,
for pictures that almost certainly, if it's accurate, someone in the office just did a cut and paste to make an educational point. And unfortunately, it makes it look like these are the practice's own patients. So now you've got medical board issues. I mean, this is a it's an unforced error. You don't need to do this. But how do you prevent that? You start by thinking, there are some pictures I'd like to get up there. What's the best way to manage it? Well, use your own patient's pictures that you've gotten authorization. Use your own work. This is awesome. Or if you're going to use third-party images, buy them. Get a license or get them from the vendors, the companies that sell fillers, for example, have stock photos. Just do it the right way. That's my take home point. Stop, think, imagine there are attorneys out there circling like sharks, hoping to get rich off of people like you. Just don't let them do it. Let them go somewhere else.
no, I think that's a great point. And photos, I mean, we talk all day long about taking good photos, taking photos, posting them, have your patients post their photos in their own personal. And if you are busy or not even that busy, you're seeing patients, there are before and afters. Absolutely, I agree with you to use your own patients' photos. But there again, you have staff that are working for you who don't know the rules and the regs. So we need to talk about this in meetings. And that's really an important point when it comes to compliance for any practice, plastic surgery or not. So it can just be a nurse or a PA that has an injectable practice or a laser
Yeah.
practice. It is across the board. And you want to avoid all of these landmines. So I thank you so much today for your time again. And it's always a pleasure, and it's always educational, informational to have you on.
Awesome. We'll do it again soon. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Cheryl.
Thank you. So that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book, Beautifully Profitable. So you can actually have meetings and talk about marketing. And it's an amazing digital resource guide. So you could download it. We have 50% off, and it can run meetings for you for the next year. And I do suggest having weekly meetings, but if you can't do that, then do monthly meetings. If you can't do them in person, then do them virtually. There is no excuse not to have a meeting. It could be an early morning bagel meeting, it could be a lunch pizza meeting, after work meeting, even if it's 15 minutes and you pick one subject to talk about at each of your meetings. It should be the job of your office manager to put this together. We do put together marketing plans, and all of what is going on in your practice should also be discussed on an ongoing basis. And then we talk about PR strategies, and you want to be part of public relations. It's not the typical marketing. It's going out to the media and representing your practice as something, or positioning yourself as an expert. So in the book, we talk about PR strategies And we have many tips on that in the book, Beautifully Profitable. So we do, as you do, complimentary sessions to expand your profit centers. So whether you're starting out or you're expanding, we can help you to grow your med spa or your aesthetic wellness practice. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing more of your questions. We want you to save the dates. We have open discussion series starting with expert interviews, and we have some hot topics in cosmetic dermatology with David Goldberg, and then marketing and branding and hot topics with Gregory Buford, who is a plastic surgeon. So we're trying to cover all ground. And then we have Jake Campbell, who's amazing, and he's Dr. Shino Bay's manager in his practice. And Mona Staplefield, which a lot of you know, but she's a skincare professional and a whole lot more. And she's, you know, on the hill all the time fighting. Well, I shouldn't use that word right now, but she's there working on bills and working on things to help the aesthetic industry. So I look forward to the next 4, and there will be a lot more on beautifulforever.com and Beautiful Forever University. Everything is posted. We have weekly and monthly articles that are posted, as well as all of the webinars. So if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us, and I look forward to hearing from you. And education is the key to success. So start educating yourself and educating your staff.